Yeah, so what's up, people? I've been asked to talk about some stuff. Things that I got going on, things that I've got clients interested in, and my name is Eternal. I'm a music producer. Um, I also mix and alternatively, I teach music production. Um, so I guess kind of without getting into a long thing, I've had some successes and some failures, and so I've gotten to see what it's like to hang out with the A-list crowd and be on some projects and run through all of the record labels and hang out with all the execs and the owners even. You know, um, I rode around in Russell Simmons Maybach like. So you know what I mean? It's shout outs to Kenny Lee. Um, so yeah, these are all experiences I've had. I've also been on the independent side and helped some people do some pretty outrageous things. One of the clients that I worked with, she, wow, we were able to take her and in the summer, go out and earn $30,000 cash. So that's an accomplishment. You know, Currently, I'm working with an artist. How to spell Mark. I'll link him, in the video. Dope artist. He's singer, breakdancer, businessman, like you know, uh, a minister. You know what I mean? I guess I could call him that because he does preach love. You know what I mean? And there's some healing in even the way that he carries himself, kind of like me. You know what I mean? Um, a lot of people, how could I say, like follow me? People adopt my principles and kind of apply them to their lives to have success. So that's some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. What does it feel like? Like, what does it mean? What happens in your life when you have success using your art? And I can tell you firsthand, it's a beautiful thing. I've had those moments where, I'm just hanging out and somebody will drive by and I hear a song I did on the radio and it's like, yo, like, it's a beautiful thing, and you're getting spun and you're starting to get the feedback and things are happening in several states, and it's just a great place to be, like something that you created, and put your love into, is starting to affect people, and they're motivated by it, and we hope that that's going to happen for every single thing that we do, as producers, artists. I'm sure you'll understand and you'll relate to this. They're all like, all of your creations are like your babies, and you love them, and you have hopes and dreams for them. Even the ones that you don't feel strongly about, you're like, oh, get out there, little fella, and do your thing. Like you know, it's just what we do. I've got this tape. I keep tape over my camera, and so the tape is kind of sneaking into the shot. Um, you know, so yeah, that's you know, I guess like um, many people have asked me like, what's my process? Well, I mean, I work two distinctly different ways, and there are others, but I'll talk about the two distinctly different ways. And this is production focused. Um, so the first way is where I kind of quickly create basic frameworks. So sometimes I'll start with the keys, sometimes I'll start with the drums. And people always ask me like, you start with the beat first, or you just start with your music first or whatever. And so typically, these days I'm not doing a lot of sample based work, but back in the days when I was doing sample based work, a lot of it would start with a sample or a loop or a chunk of things that I was playing a certain kind of way. So these days that translates more to like me sitting in front of probably Serum. These days I'm using X for Records Serum. This is not a paid advertisement. I'm co-signing it because I love the product. I use it frequently. Its Serum is dope. Um, so typically I sit down in front of Serum and initialize preset and play around and kind of create a sound. I might start with the saw and filter it and maybe do some modulation, LFO stuff or whatever, and create movement and then maybe some width and and tailor the sound and kind of you know um, get some grit out of it or whatever it is that I'm chasing. If it's a pad or a pluck or whatever it is that I'm doing, and ideally I end up with something pleasing or something inspiring, and then it becomes a thoughtless process where I'm just playing with the sound and the sound kind of tells me the way that it wants to be played, and I play that, and I play fairly well. Like, I'm sloppy, but I can usually kind of mash around on the keys and find some stuff and walk my way up and down the keyboard, and I just look for those notes. Man, I think need to pull this tape off. I just look for those notes that speak to me. I don't really know how to explain it. It's a spiritual thing. It's just, it's like, but basically I get a calling, something will reach out to me and say, hey, play me. And then it'll say, play me like this. And, and kind of give me an insight as to how it wants to be heard. And so I'll do that, generally speaking, and come up with a chord progression or whatever. And then I may slide into like playing around with some effects and treating it if the sound isn't exactly what it should be, or I hear it a different way based on like what I just played. But generally speaking, the patch itself has all of that in it, and it's kind of like letting me know what it is, so to speak, just to not repeat myself. But that's what it is, and then from there, I'll start either layering it with other stuff. Maybe it's, I'm playing a chord progression, and that chord progression will be, kind of plucky, and I'll be like, okay, let me offset that with something, legato and long and, and or dreamy, you know what I mean, or whatever that might be. But usually I look for some kind of contrast that I'll create some kind of tug of war or call and response or something like that so that they're complementary. And and then from there I may derive a bass line or go right into making a beat. And and again, it's kind of like the original chord progression or whatever is playing at that point. If I've decided to put a top line on it, and let that rock, that will usually say I'm the chorus, and then when I mute the top line, that's the verse. You know what I mean? And from there, then I'll start to put a beat, and usually in my head, I'm hearing drums already by that point. I'll kind of have an idea what I want my drums to sound like. Rhythmically, I may or may not have an idea. But again, mash on the keys and figure it out. Sometimes I'll just hear like, you know, I want my snares played this way, or sometimes I'll be like, I just want my hi-hats, or sometimes I hear the whole beat and just play that. You know, it really kind of depends. And usually around this point, where I've got like three or four elements starting to happen, there's usually some kind of clutter beginning to happen in the soundscape, and so I've got to start making choices as I'm adding elements about like where things live in the frequency range and the spectrum, and do they live over here? Is this panned off to the side, or is this straight up the center? because now I got like 5 elements all or 10 elements all up in the center, and they need to start spreading out. And so I'm one of those producers that's simultaneously mixing my work and at least pointing it in a certain direction. um, and texture is really important. Color is really important. These are the things that, or the words that I use to kind of describe the sounds. It's very hard to describe sounds. The English language doesn't really have ways of kind of getting across exactly what I hear in my head. So but in any case, engineers and producers alike, we've sort of developed our own language, and so at least we're relatable. But I've definitely been in a place where I'm in the room with someone and they say, "Hey, I hear this thing," and if they can't call like a reference to say, "Hey, it's a Korg, M1 organ bass sounding patch," uh, then we kind of like have to spend some time listening and searching and finding and you know but in any case, for the most part, when I'm putting together songs, it's me in my space alone. Sometimes it's with the artist sitting there, and I'll map out. And then so, you know, in short, that's one way. I guess in long, because that was a pretty long explanation. But that's one way that I work. And generally speaking, um, I went a little bit further. You know, how could I say in detail? But that's generally speaking the process of how I create in general. And so the difference in the production styles, the two different styles that I spoke about, is that in one style, I'm quickly doing that and moving on to the next, and then doing another, and then another, and then another. And sometimes I'll do like five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 of those in a day. Depending on how long we're sitting, if an artist is with me and we've got other things to knock out or whatever. But generally speaking, 4 ideas, 5 ideas will come out, from me creating patches, or from one patch I may make 4 or 5 different ideas from one patch. But generally speaking, that's the quick process, and that's banging out a lot of ideas very quickly. And so sometimes that'll actually happen in an hour or two. I'll have 5 ideas, so or even 10, depending on how sparse I'm making the track. Sometimes it'll be just one sound and a beat and maybe a top line, and then I'll move on to the next. And generally speaking, that stuff comes out fairly quickly after I have the patch. Um, and so the other way is a slower, more deliberate process. I'm doing the same thing, but I'm taking far more time crafting each sound and making sure that it fits perfectly and that it sits right. And I'm crafting the different sections of the song, and I'm not just taking a loop and then putting the top line on it and calling that the verse and the chorus, but I'm actually fleshing out the real parts. So this is the verse. This is a section. This is a B section. Here's a pre-chorus. Here's a chorus. Here's a bridge, and you know what I mean? I'm fleshing out these different things and finding it. And generally speaking, even with the different sections, I'm not using all the same patch. I'm creating different patches for those things, or at least finding a preset. But generally speaking, I'm creating patches. I do use presets from time to time, just for the sake of kind of brevity, like getting to the point very quickly. But usually when I'm doing stuff like that, I'm using like a, you know, a a piano, like a Steinway C, you know what I mean? Or I'm using, a Wurlitzer keyboard, or a specific sound, like a specific, like Moog patch or something like that. Maybe I'm using a Jupiter, or I'm using a Prophet synth plug-in, or the real thing, depending on where we're at. Um, you know, um, but generally speaking, um, I'm creating at least my main patch from scratch, or I'm modifying a preset, which I don't do too much of for whatever reason. I don't know why. I just tend to, even when I hear a preset that I like, I tend to kind of go back and recreate that patch without all of the extra stuff that they put on it that I'm not feeling. Or, maybe I'm hearing the patch a certain way. Like I like something about the patch, the screechiness of it, let's say, or whatever, and I recreate that screechiness. But I maybe they used I don't know, a pulse or a square wave, and I decided to use a triangle because I wanted something smoother, or a saw because I wanted something a little bit edgier, or something like that, or a sine wave, and just I wanted it to sound more like an organ, but still have some screechy quality. However, I attain that, who knows? But so that's the gist of it. So, um, I guess I hope this has been informative and helpful for you. I'd like to do more of these. Like I have a long list of questions that people have been asking me about my process and stuff like that. And it's one thing for me to kind of get on and do a tutorial and walk you through it and show you, here I'm creating a patch, here this is a sine wave, and so on, and all of that, and starting from wavetable to finished product. That's one thing, but just to talk about the process and kind of get to the point. I feel like this is a good place for me to be, and I'd like to do more of this, and I think that you guys want to hear more of this stuff. So I'm looking forward to bringing it to you. Again, my name is Eternal. My producer name is LoveExcelsAll. And that's what it is. Thanks for joining me. Peace.